Welcome to Lesson 6, Magic Hour. Have you ever been so close to something that you wanted that you can almost taste it? When my structure is done and I get to convert it to words, I'm always like that. And that big day is here. In Lesson 5, you used lines to connect all the desires of your audience to all the things that make you special. And that constituted the structure of your story. And by using those lines to connect what your audience desires to what you offer, you also proved something incredibly valuable to yourself. You proved that you are offering value to this audience. You proved that they need what you want. You proved that all we've got to do is make sure that they understand how important you are and all the value you can bring, and they will realize that your ideas are powerful and your idea should win. When I'm done with that Lesson 5 step, connecting all the desires to all the things that make them special, when I'm done with that step, here's what I do. I take a deep breath. I usually make some microwave popcorn, and I know that all I've got to do is turn my lines in that story structure into simple conversational phrases. When I think of it that way, it sounds pretty easy, right? So let's do that. Let's transform our lines into words. And since I'm always trying to simplify my lessons to give it to you in the purest form, my subtitle is key. Just talk. Really, just talk. Seriously. Our goal is to skip the jargon, skip the $9 words, skip the long, boring details no one wants, and just convert the lines we drew in the last session into simple conversational words. Your audience will eat it up. When we met, I promised you a simple step-by-step path to create the first draft of a story to persuade a target audience. So let's do a kind of a 1-minute reminder of that path, all right? First, you got yourself ready. You cut down on distractions by gathering whatever you had already about you, your company, your idea, your audience, right? Then we stopped thinking about our audience and we only thought about ourselves. I joked with you, that's the only time I'm going to ask you to forget about your audience, and it probably is. We made a list of all the things that make your idea special. Then we picked our audience and we thought about what was important to them. We made a simple list of their top desires. And if we knew, hopefully, and if we didn't, we could test this, but if we knew, we kept track of the most important desire, right? We didn't worry too much of that because it's easy to test later, but if we knew, we did that, right? And then we drew lines to connect our audience desires to the things that make us special. In about 30 seconds, you're going to see why those lines we drew are the key, because they are like gold. And finally, we ended with the one tiny painful part, looking at those things that make us special, looking at which ones of those don't support an audience desire, are not connected to an audience desire, don't have a line attached to them, and that they therefore probably are not worth including in your top level story. That's it, right? And then we're done with story structure. Now we're going to see why the lines we drew are like gold, because all that's left is turning each line into simple conversational words, and essentially into one sentence. And that's what we're going to do in this lesson. Just turning lines into sentences makes it sound kind of easy, right? I'm going to wait for you to come back to me to tell me if you really find it easy, but all I can say with pretty good confidence is it's going to be way easier than doing it any other way. Each line connecting desire and capability, each of those lines turns into a sentence. And because each line connects their desire to your capabilities, it's automatically tailored perfectly for your audience. And when you convert that line to a sentence and then smush those sentences together, you're done with the first draft of your story. It's really that easy. We're going to take what can feel like a big, scary task, creating a story to get people to take action, and break it into small, totally reliable steps. And here's the big deal. When you convert the lines into words, you get to think about those words with the absolute confidence that your story speaks directly to what your audience needs to hear in order to decide to do what you want them to do. I cannot overstate how much easier it is to pick your words when you know your structure is right. You're confident. There's no more indecision. There's no delay. There's no more, should I say this? Should I say that? And the best part is, this is the great thing. You're the expert in putting this stuff into your own words, because the heart of this lesson couldn't be simpler. Just talk. And after doing this for a ridiculous number of years, I am totally comfortable forecasting that your story will be better and more persuasive than the words created by the million or so people that are supposedly trained and skilled as senior sales and marketing people in the United States. Let's do that. In the beginning of this lesson, I promised our goal was about the first draft, right? It's not about getting all the final wording you're going to use, whether it's in a meeting or an email or a website or a flyer or all the other things you can use your story for. That's because the way you deliver your story will and can change the words you use, right? And that's a good thing. The tweet version is shorter than the email version. The email version is shorter than the proposal version. And if you snag a spot on stage in front of your best audience, you don't know if they're going to give you 5 minutes or 30 minutes. So words can change, and that's a good thing. We're going to do a draft today. The magic is you're going to be able to shrink or expand your first draft to fit whatever medium or length you need. And no matter what, you're going to have your best possible story to connect with your audience. So yes, this is a first draft, but let's still talk about how to make it pretty good, because the better it is, the more time we save later. Since we're getting into words, I get that this can feel scary, right? People like Mark Twain here have told us that we have to be perfect, right? This is just this great quote. The difference between the almost right word and the right word is the difference between the lightning bug and the lightning. He told us it's got to be perfect, right? And I've been doing this long enough that I know this part can make people nervous. Heck, it can make me nervous sometimes. So let's take a moment and relax. All the work that you've done on story structure, probably going to make this the easiest wording of something you've ever done. And that's a big deal. This is just sort of my own commentary coming out, but when wording is easier, it is less annoying as a task for you. And when it's less annoying, you will do it more. And when you do it more, you get better at it. And when you get better at it, it actually becomes fun. I am not pretending that converting the structure into writing is trivial. It's not trivial. But if you and I continue to work together in the future, we can talk about lots of ways to make writing easier and more effective. But even if you never take another course with me, if you just use this technique for your high-stakes communications, your presentations, your sales pitches, your most critical emails, maybe even your one-on-ones with your boss or your customer, you will be wildly more persuasive. I'll start with what I promise is both the easiest and usually most effective way to make your point, and that is just talk. When you're writing your story, write what you really say. And you know what? There's even an easy way to capture what you would naturally say. Your smartphone can almost surely take dictation and type out whatever you say without you having to buy anything at all, without buying anything new. I am totally serious that over half of all my writing starts by dictating into my iPhone. The keyboard has that little microphone icon. If you haven't used it, you got to try it out. And when you tap it, the phone just types whatever you say. Yes, I get it. I've talked to a lot of people about this. It feels a little bit weird at first, all right? But then it becomes second nature. And here's the most important reason to try. Because those words literally came out of your mouth, you almost always end up with something that sounds human and real and even interesting, instead of the horrible corporate jargon that everybody hates and that happens when people start typing out things and they think they've got to speak in marketingese and suddenly they think they've got to be sophisticated and what they get is something that's terrible. Just talk. So let's go deeper. Let's pretend you end up with a list of the 5 most important things your audience wants, your audience needs, right? And you even know which one is probably the most important. As usual, we're going to start with our friends at Simple Sprouts, who make their incredible product, which is a little paper pod like a tea bag filled with seeds plus dirt plus fertilizer, all right? So let's start with the most important desire. Take less time. It connects to our core product description. Our pods combine the seeds and the dirt and the fertilizer, right? Let's also keep an eye on don't get too dirty. That's linked to these clean biodegradable wrappers, because the wrapper and the pod, they're so connected, all right? Everything else can just go away. And now, just so you don't have to read my terrible chicken scratches anymore, let's make that text clearer, okay? So these are the exact same items, take less time, and don't get too dirty, that connect to the pods and connect to the wrappers, right? Now to start, imagine someone walking up to you and saying something that people really would do, a very human thing. Hi, the most important thing to me is to take less time when I'm planting a garden. Can you help me? Think about that, all right? That's all it is, a real human conversation. How would you help? How would you answer that question from a real person who needs your help? What would you say? You simply look at the lines and you start talking normally. But how do we get started? How do we get started turning that line into something that's really simple, that's really conversational? So when you're creating a sentence for every one of those lines, I really do encourage you to say what feels natural to you, because it's going to come out as more authentic. But if you're stuck, here's a classic form that I use all the time as a first draft. You get, and in parentheses, your desire, you get your desire, whatever that desire is, and you get it because of our capability. So take less time, we got that one as the desire, and the way we pay that off is that we've got our pods, right? The seeds, the fertilizer, and the soil. It might become something like, you can get a gorgeous garden that might be the envy of your neighbors in about 5 minutes. Because you just drop our pods in the dirt and your plants have everything you need. The seeds, the soil, even the right fertilizer. And if you want to get fancy, by bringing in the second point, we might expand that a little bit. We might say, you get a gorgeous garden in about 5 minutes because you just drop our pods in the dirt. Your plants have everything you need, the seeds, the soil, even the right fertilizer. And because everything's inside our clean, biodegradable wrapper, you won't even get your hands dirty. We're just going to do this for each of the key audience desires. So let's do one more together. Remember, Eat What We Grow? It was connected to two things. It was connected to edible plant options, and it was also connected to monthly recipe emails, right? If we use the same kind of wording tip in number one, this sentence could be something like, your garden is going to make dinners and barbecues tastier and more fun because of our great veggie options. We'll even send you monthly recipes so you know what to make with what's in season. All right, now it's your time. It's time to jump on your own connecting lines. Check out the lines you've got, which are connecting your audience desires to the things that make you special. Remember, you already narrowed your audience desires down to the top 5 or so, right? So this isn't a big project. You only have to do this like 5 times. And here's the great news. When you write those sentences and just say them one after another, you are ready for your audience. You're ready to get out there and talk to your audience, knowing that you're hitting what matters most to them. Now, how does that work? How does it work when you actually get in front of your audience? Let's even talk about that with tip number 2. If you're talking, the conversation flow is just like this. It's as simple as this. Just start with this sentence about their most important desire. Wait for them to nod. They always will, right? You've said you really want this, and this is the way we give it to you. At minimum, they're going to kind of grunt. I often joke that when you're doing a highest level story for someone, they're never going to say, "Oh my goodness, I'm convinced, that's perfect." What they're going to do is go, "Huh." And I often joke that the phrase "huh" is totally different from the phrase "huh." Huh means, I'm not sure I believe you, but keep going because I think this is interesting, and I'm gonna give you more time. If you hear "huh," they probably aren't gonna let you keep talking because they don't believe you and they don't want to be talking to you, right? But you're looking for that first thing. Huh, that's interesting. And then you just go on with the others. So you start with the most important one, you wait for them to nod, you wait for them to react, and you follow with the rest in a nice, casual, conversational way. If you're creating an email or maybe a web page, these sentences may be all the text you need. And if you want more detail, this is where it gets fun. Like, let's say you're doing a whole website, then each of those sentences is going to become a heading, and then you can add all the detail into that you want. Either way, all that mapping you did guarantees you are saying the things your audience cares about. You are solving their problem. You're giving them what they want, and all they have to do to get what they want is to do what you want. I know I keep harping on this idea that you should try to just speak normally in your own words in order to be more interesting, more compelling, right? And here's another war story on why this is such a big deal. I had a client who was absolutely brilliant. He's one of those world-class people who really might have known more about his stuff than almost anyone else on the planet. But he could not talk about his product without falling headfirst into a giant, ugly vat of big words and jargon. No matter who he spoke to, he'd say his product offered something like coordinated, simultaneous fusion across disintermediated, disaggregated, and inconsistent data. Tell me that doesn't get you excited, right? He really believed he was being helpful. He thought he was being specific. Instead, day after day, he was speaking ancient Greek to people who only knew how to speak English. It's not that those features that he loved so much weren't valuable. It's not that he wasn't correct, but he couldn't give his audience this warm, fuzzy feeling that he understood their desires and could explain how his product could help them. It flat out didn't work. It couldn't work. You can do better. You can just talk to people. When you do that, I promise you, people will listen. Here's another tip that may make wording easier. Try talking about what you offer using the words of your customer's desire. Let's see how this might work in something other than selling seeds. Let's say your business sells some kind of information, all right? Maybe you're teaching guitar or a foreign language. Your list of what makes you special might include something like 12 classes a week, that's possible, an end of chapter test, okay, and information that you can download onto phones. All right, those are the 3 things that was on your what makes us special. We have 12 classes a week, that's a lot. We have end of chapter test at every chapter, and the information we've got you can download onto a smartphone. So what does it mean when we say we're going to talk about what you offer using the words of your customer's desire? Let's play that out. 12 classes a week? Well, that was clearly connected to convenience for working people, right? So it might become something like, we have classes that are going to fit a busy working schedule. Similarly, an end of chapter test, well, that's clearly to help customers who wonder if they're actually learning anything from you. So it might become, we include a quiz after every subject to make sure you really understand it, because that's what's really important to us, that you understand it. And download information on your phone, well, that's clearly about learning on the road, right? So it might become your guide or your tutor or your reference material is always in your pocket, ready when you want it. So when you talk about what makes you special, follow the line back to the desire you're satisfying and use the words of the customer to describe that desire and describe the benefit that you're giving them in your story. How about one more tip, just to make wording more interesting, more engaging? I saved one of my favorites here for last. It's also one of the easiest. If you can make this a habit, it will make you more persuasive forever. Every time you write a phrase, whether it's for a presentation slide or in an email, just pretend you're in the shoes of the audience and ask yourself one dopey, simple question. Why should I care? This becomes more obvious if you think about the time someone else was trying to get you to do something. When you and I are in the audience for someone else, for someone else's idea, that phrase, why should I care, really is going through our mind constantly, whether we're conscious of it or not. This goes back to our most primitive instincts, all the way back to prehistoric times living in caves. There's a sound behind that bush. Why should I care? Well, if it's a bird, it might be food. If it's a bear, I better stay away. Or this water smells different. Why should I care? Well, if it's just different than I'm used to and I'm thirsty, I'm going to drink it. If it smells really nasty, it might be poison. I better not. Or let's get out of the cave and closer to business. Maybe you run a nail salon and you want me to know we keep our tools in alcohol. Why should I care? If it's because the tools are going to stay shiny, I really don't care. If it'll avoid my fingernails getting infected, I love that you care about my safety. Or maybe you run a smartphone repair service and you're certified to repair Samsung and Apple phones. Why should I care? If it just means you know what you're doing, okay, well, at least I care a little bit, right? But if it means Samsung or Apple is going to replace my phone under warranty after you work on it, if you mess up, well, that means a ton, right? So when I call this a habit, I mean that sort of like an instinct or a knee-jerk reaction. When we had a kid and I started leaving restaurants with this child, I trained myself to look around the seats and the floor before leaving. I never used to do that, right? And I'd leave a lot of stuff. But with a kid, you've all got all these toys and stuff, so I taught myself. I made it a habit. Every time I left the table, I'd first make sure I had my son, and then I would make sure I looked under the table. If you're anything like me, as you leave a house, you probably check your pocket to make sure you got your phone. I gotta say, I don't even think I realize how often I do that anymore. And if you and I end up working together on presentations, for example, I'm gonna encourage another simple practice habit that'll help you blow people away on stage. These are habits that we create for ourselves that help us get through life more effectively. Just ask yourself, why should I care? Every time you write something, every time you plan to say something, just make it a habit, and that habit is going to make you more persuasive. And oh my goodness, it works so well at keeping your audiences engaged and getting you to drop saying things, to stop saying things that just don't matter. Because if why should I care turns out to be, you know what, I don't, it hasn't earned a place in your story. All right, in this one lesson, I obviously can't cover all the ways to pick wording for your most persuasive story, but you can do this. And trust that it mostly comes down to that one guideline, the subtitle of this whole lesson, just talk. Just speak normally with the confidence of knowing you are focused only on the connection between what people desire and what makes you special. You will do great and you will be more persuasive. At the same time, I know being comfortable speaking to people to persuade them is challenging. That's why I cover dozens of tips and tricks in other courses. So congratulations, you have completed the Persuasion Foundation Formula course. And after all these years that I've done this, I am completely confident that you are prepared to create a story to persuade people to do what you need them to do. More prepared, way more prepared than the vast majority of people that are trying to do this. I hope you took a few notes. And more than that, I hope you have an audience in mind and you're thinking about what you want that audience to do and what that powerful idea is that you want to communicate to get people to do what you need them to do to achieve your goals. Try the Persuasion Foundation formula and you will be shocked at how quickly you get to a story that can persuade people and get them to be excited and motivated to do what you need them to do. One of my biggest surprises in all my years of coaching is that the best communicators are always the ones who want to be better. I've just seen it year in, year out. The best communicators are always the ones that want to be better. So when you see improvement, drop me a line. I really want to know. And also, come on back, because there are so many other things we can do together to make sure Your powerful idea is the one that wins. And I hope you'll join me in this overall goal, my overall commitment that the best ideas should win. And it's up to us to help make that happen. I'll see you soon.